everybody, and welcome to our premiere show of Laudato Si. Happy Earth Day, everyone. Today is the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, so just a little quick information about it. It started with a US senator who was concerned about the environment. You know, this was a time where we had lead gas, we were using CFCs, we were beginning to see some of the negative effects of what we now call climate. And so in 1970, Earth Day was created to help raise awareness and to educate people about the negative consequences of this. In 1990, Dennis Hayes organized this event to make it international. And so in 1990, there was over 200 million people who were active in Earth Day, and it was hosted in over 141 countries, which is really amazing. And so this led to a couple of new things where we had the Earth Summit in 1992 in Rio de Janeiro, and this has been really impressive and a cornerstone for a lot of environmental writings that have taken place. Lots of the material founded there has been used over and over again and cited to help give us a better understanding of where we need to go and to kind of a baseline for where things were and how we can grow and do better with taking care of our common home. Earth Day is one example of ways that we are caring for our common home, but we also have the global Catholic climate movement. And so their kind of tagline is hear the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. And so something that Pope Francis has talked about and many other popes and bishops have talked about in our Catholic social teaching is that the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor are linked together. And so as Catholics, as people of faith, we have a particular propensity to care for the most vulnerable, to look out for those in our society who are ostracized, who are marginalized, who don't have the same benefits and resources that the rest of us have, and we're called to care for them compassionately. So recognizing that there is a link between what's happening to the earth and what's happening to the poor is really important for us. There's a new Canadian chapter of this global Catholic climate movement. We also have the season of creation, which was started off by the Orthodox Church, and very quickly Catholics and Anglicans United Church have become involved in this. And so the season of creation starts on September 1st and it goes until October 4th. October 4th is the feast day for St. Francis of Assisi, who we know is kind of the patron saint of the environment. And so there's a special propensity that we have to celebrate with him. Hopefully you're watching this video, if you're a little bit interested about, you know, what is the Catholic Church? What is our response to the climate crisis, or how real is this? What does Pope Francis say? I tried to read this book, but it's really long, and I just need some help with kind of mulling through. It's a pretty dense book. There's a lot in it. And so part of this series, what we're going to be doing is going through chapter by chapter and looking at one major theme. There are many in each chapter. We could talk for days about all the material that is in Laudato Si, just to try and break it down so that we can have some, helpful dialogue and conversation around these issues, because they are sometimes overwhelming and they are very complicated. And so how can we as individuals, as a church, as a community in southern Saskatchewan or wherever you're viewing from, how can we have an impact on these kinds of things? So a little bit about Earth Day and kind of what's been going on. So what we're going to talk about is Laudato Si. Little bit of background. Laudato Si means praise be to you, and it's the beginning of a canticle that a prayer, a song that Saint Francis wrote. And St. Francis was alive in the 1181, 82 he was born. People aren't quite sure. And he died in the year 1226. So that's when St. Francis was around, and he wrote a canticle to the Son, and it started off with "Praise to you, our Lord." So he addresses, he personifies, so he speaks to aspects of nature. He calls them brother and sister, and it's a really useful way for us to think critically about our relationship that we have to the created world. So Pope Francis today is kind of recalling that imagery and that message. And so I think that's really important for us to take a step back and to think about how, right from the very beginning, from the title of the book, you don't even have to read any of it, we're challenged to think about our relationship with the created world in a different way, in a much more familial way. And I think that in itself is, an interesting approach to take right from the beginning. So just a little bit of stats for you. So the encyclical just means letter. So the encyclical came out on May 24th, 2015. It's 184 pages, but like I said, don't be worried about that because we're going to go through step by step. So this will be a reoccurring show that we have. And part of the reason that we're doing this is to enable people to have a conversation and to talk about these things. So at the very beginning, Pope Francis says, the urgent challenge to protect our common home includes a concern to bring the whole human family together. He's not just talking about Catholics, he's not just talking about Christians, he's talking about all humans, so that we can seek a sustainable and integral development, for we know that things can change. Humanity still has the ability to work together in building up our common home. Particular appreciation is owed to those who tirelessly seek to resolve the tragic efforts of environmental degradation on the lives of the world's poorest. So again, right away from the very beginning, Pope Francis is strengthening this understanding that the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor are one. He says that young people demand change, and I urgently appeal then for a new dialogue about how we are shaping the future of our planet. We need a conversation which includes everyone, since the environmental challenges we are undergoing and its human roots concern and affect all of us. We require a new and universal solidarity. As the bishops of Southern Africa have stated, everyone's talents and involvement are needed to redress the damage caused by the human abuse of God's creation. And so I think this is really important for us to be creative, to be innovative, to think outside the box, to take some time to think critically about past hurts, about misgivings that we might have with other groups of people, and to recognize that at our core, we're all one human family and we all share this common home, and we all need to work together so that we can build with God a better world for us and for humanity and for all of creation as well. I'm going to dive into the first chapter of Laudato Si. And so just really quickly, like I said, there's a lot of information in here. And so really quickly, Pope Francis covers a couple of topics. None of them are short or easy or concise at all. But just so you get an understanding of the breadth of the information that he talks about. So in chapter 1, he talks about pollution and climate change, the issue of water, the loss of biodiversity, decline in the quality of human life, and the breakdown of society. So, he's not skirting around, not dealing with the difficult stuff. But he goes on, he talks about more. He talks about global inequality and weak responses. So he calls a criticism of kind of the general attitude of apathy. He talks about the infighting that we've had. He talks about, sometimes we can't see beyond ourselves. And he talks about the ideas that we need to let go of pride or personal agendas so that we can work towards this this common goal that should unite us all. And I think that's really an important message for our world, whether we're a religious persuasion or not, Christian or Hindu or Muslim or Jewish, or just a good human. It doesn't matter. He calls us to respond with more fervor, with more compassion, with creativity, and to be in solidarity with those who are most affected. And he also, at the very end, then talks about a variety of opinions. So he really quickly, comments that we have everyone from climate change deniers, all the way to people who are living off the grid, kind of like your granola hippie, lobbyists, advocates, and then everyone in between. And so being on either end of this polarized camps doesn't actually help us to work towards this common goal. And so he calls for us to kind of let go of those agendas so that we can work together. And I think that's really important. And I'm going to talk a little bit about COVID, because how can you not? Because this is where we are. And so I think one of the great things about COVID, recognizing all the terrible things about COVID, the death and the toll on society and economic, breakdown, people losing their jobs. Like, I'm not negating any of that at all, but I do think that there are some good things coming out of this circumstance that we're in right now, or opportunity for us to learn some really valuable lessons, or maybe relearn some really valuable lessons. Is this coming together and being supportive, this understanding of community, and family life, and being able to focus on some of that. And so I think this is a little bit of what Pope Francis is kind of hoping for, that we can come together in this way. We want to talk about, in chapter 1, a theme that Pope Francis talks about right at the very beginning is rapidification. I'm not sure if that's a real word or not, but I think the Pope probably could make up a fake word if he wanted to, because he's the Pope. I don't know. We'll just throw that out there. It might be a real word. So basically, rapidification, the speeding up human systems, our pace of work, of society, the rate of consumption that our human society is operating at, and very clearly and very evidently, it outpaces natural rhythms. Pope Francis calls for us to think critically about that. So this rapidification, so Pope Francis says that it's not when we consume, when we excel in our pace of work, when we speed up everything that we do, this kind of mentality, this reprioritization is not geared towards the common good. So the common good, we talk about the commons. So these are things like forests, the air, water table, the ozone layer, biodiversity, the soil. So these are things that we all share in common. So air, for example, if if we want to pollute and burn coal and have nuclear reactors and burn oil and not care about our carbon footprint as a province, as a country, as a continent, whatever. As we pollute that air, the polluted air doesn't stay over Estevan, or it doesn't stay over Saskatchewan, or it doesn't stay over Canada. The air moves around and we all share it in common. Eventually that pollution is going to travel around the world, and it's going to have negative effects on many people who have never made a decision or haven't been given power to make a decision to burn coal or to use, renewable resources or things like that. And so we share it in common. So the understanding that our actions, individual or societal, have consequences, good or bad. Sometimes they're good consequences, right? Not just pollution, but our consequences have actions on ourselves, but also on others who actually didn't make a decision at all. And so we have to think critically about that, and we need to protect these things that we hold in common. Now, there's also things in common, so not just environmental things, but also things like the infrastructure that we have in our city or our society, healthcare, education systems, um, the roads, sewage, plumbing, electricity, all these things are also things that we hold in common. Now, we don't share them with everyone in the world, but we do share them with our neighbors, our physical neighbors, and it does impact the way that other countries live. So, and policies that they create. So, part of my job for as social justice coordinator is I also do refugee sponsorship for the Archdiocese, and so um, Canada has a really unique refugee sponsorship system that no other country in the world does, and it's so good. We've been doing it for over 40 years now, and um, this is actually the system and kind of the process and the way that we can do private sponsorship of individuals and families is something that Canada right now is actually exporting to other countries like Australia, New Zealand, England, Ireland, and others. There's, I think, 7 right now that are kind of talking about ways to adopt and modify our system in Canada for their own countries. And so in this way, Canada is, a global leader and helping to share, technology and understanding with the broader world to help others. So this is actually a really great way for us to add, really great value to the commons and to help the poor and the vulnerable and those who are facing effects of decisions that they haven't made. Um, and so I think when we talk about the commons, specifically Pope Francis in his encyclical is talking about environmental commons. But I think if we have a broader understanding of all the things that we hold in common, we can start to look at strategies that have worked in other fields and how we can transplant some of those ideas so that we can be innovative and creative and not have to start everything from square one, because there has been a lot of work and time and effort and energy, human resources that's been put into a lot of this problem solving. And so I think part of us sharing and having a conversation and a dialogue allows us to, cross pollinate from other industries or from different technologies. And so this only strengthens the variety of ways that we can respond to this very complex problem. Um, okay, rapidification, we're speeding up our processes and we're overwhelming natural cycles. It's not geared towards the common good, and now we kind of have a baseline of what the common good is. It's not integral to human development. It tends to take away from a lot of family life, prioritization of relationships, of our health. I mean, how many people are stressed out because they work, 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 and they just don't have enough time to do the things that they would like. We don't spend the quality time with our families that we wish we could. We have guilt about that, but we're providing for, our family by earning a wage so that we can have a nice house and be provided for and food and comforts and all that stuff. And so these are two kind of competing goods, but it puts us at a real crossroads where we have to make difficult decisions. And so maybe the pace of work, maybe the want to be able to buy and consume and to have is actually, though it's seen as a good by society, Pope Francis offers, and the Catholic Church has, talked about this for centuries, that maybe that's not quite, where our priorities need to be. And so if we can kind of have a little bit of flexibility to think about this and to really look at what is important in our lives, where do we want to spend our time and energy, what is worth our time and our energy? What are we going to lose sleep over? Is it work? Is it our family? Is it guilt? Maybe those aren't the things that we need to be doing. I also hope that when you go home, maybe you share this video with some friends or family, and that this can spark a conversation about, you know what, we do have kind of a grace time right now where a lot of these extra things that are pulling us in every direction, a lot of that has been paused right now. And so can we take some time to be introspective? Can we take some time to foster meaningful relationships, and to maybe reprioritize some of the things in our lives? Not throw everything out, of course, but I'm not saying like, oh, everything making money and working and that's bad and you shouldn't do that. No, we live in the world. We need to have food and shelter and have our needs provided for. You have a professional job. You need to dress professionally. Like, that's not, don't take it to that degree. That's not what I'm saying. But it's just how high a priority is that for us. When we're living in this fast-paced life, we intuitively know that this pace isn't sustainable. We can see it in our oceans with the garbage. We hear about it on the news. When we ship our recycling to the Philippines, we export our problems to other places, to the poor, to the vulnerable, to those who don't have a lot of power and control over their lives. We see it when we go to the landfill and just the amount of waste. When we look in our closets, the amount of clothes that we have, when we look in our garbages and look at the amount of food that we throw out, the plastic, the wrapping, the stuff that fills our houses that doesn't actually bring us joy, that doesn't give us a better quality of life. And all of this leads to anxiety. This is what Pope Francis says. We live in a fast-paced life. It's not integral to human development. It actually hinders human development, meaningful relationships, and it's not sustainable, and we know that. Whether we admit it to ourselves or not, we know that it's not sustainable. And so this leads to anxiety. And so think about, I do it all the time. I lay in bed and worry about stuff, or not sleep, because why would you sleep, at like 10 o'clock at night when you could lay in bed and worry about it? And so these are some of the things that we kind of have an opportunity right now to think about. So, like I said, Pope Francis talks about a lot of themes in the first chapter of Laudato Si. There are 6. This is the first one. But the one that I wanted to pull out and talk about a little bit, and that I think is really relevant right now for our lives, living in the midst of COVID-19, is this rapidification. How does this resonate with you in your life? Or is there a question that you have to kind of understand this a little bit more? Is there something that's been really helpful for you, an insight that you've had? I guess I'll just talk a little bit about how Laudato Si fits into the rest of Catholic social teaching. I had to Google this because I wasn't quite sure of the date, but the Catholic Church has had Catholic social teaching. The very first encyclical, Rerum Novarum, came out 129 years ago. I'll just show you some, but this is on the development of peoples. Pope Paul VI. Popularum Progressio is the Latin name you might have heard, or might not. I don't know how many people speak Latin. This one is Truth, Unity, and Peace. It's the first encyclical of Pope John the 23rd. And so Pope John the 23rd, he was the Pope that started the Second Vatican Council. He's a saint now, and very cool dude. He also wrote, and I don't have it here, but Pacem in Terra, so Peace on Earth. And that encyclical has to do with impending nuclear holocaust. That's what was going on in the world at that time, and so he wrote an encyclical, a letter, to address some of these issues. Another one, John the 23rd, Christianity and Social Progress. So in this, he talks about how we as Christians need to respond to some of the themes that Pope Francis actually is talking about. Reprioritizing family, looking at what are our social structures, how do they support the poor, how do they not? And so it's a little bit of a criticism of that. There's also John Paul II. This is a encyclical on labor and work and how we value that. There's a little bit of social commentary also on that. So Laudato Si doesn't come out of a void. The topics that Pope Francis is talking about are things that have been discussed by numerous popes for, decades, over a century, actually, 130 years, basically. And so this is the rich tradition that we have of Catholic social teaching. This is a really great resource. It's from the Jesuit Forum for Social Faith and Justice. So this is an office in Toronto. When I was studying in Toronto, I had the opportunity to work with some of these people, really excellent, like top shelf theologians, people who live out their faith in a really integrated and holistic way. They're just so awesome. Father Bill Ryan, Jesuit, helped write this. He's passed away now, but just amazing human. So this resource, you can purchase this book. I think it's like $14.95, or you can download a PDF for free. And this is a study guide. So it just goes through, there's, in pink, there's questions for people to talk about. The yellow boxes are quotes from Laudato Si, but it has images, pictures, but it breaks down some of the themes from each chapter. And it's created to be something that you gather with, a small group of people and share a meal, reflect on your own life, and then, things that you've learned or what you've read or questions that you have that you're grappling with. From Laudato Si. And so this is really great. So I know that there's a book club at St. Joseph's in Belgoni that is working on this. So if you would like information on this, you can email me. I'd just love to connect with you, hear some of the things that you're doing in your own parishes, in your homes, ways that you're living out, Laudato Si, and that you're taking time for rest and reprieve. So with that, I think I will say thank you and goodbye. And I guess I'll just say, if you enjoyed this, please share this. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube, on Facebook also. And just hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks so much. God bless. Bye.